Hello, everyone, again. This is the IITT 36th episode. It's about TC208, slope stability, and landslides. We're going to record it, and deep inside, I'm a little bit sad because this is my last episode as president. Hopefully, the next president keeps going. The good news is we did 36 out of 40, so we almost covered all the technical committees or subspecialties of geotechnical engineering. So I'm very happy. It was an initiative I started as president, and we're it was very successful. We're very happy as a team on the board. And I'm not going to waste too much of your time. I will see you hopefully all next week in the international conference in Vienna. I'm going to start with my slide introducing our great speakers for today. So I will share my screen. One, two, and here we go. Starting with the secretary of TC208, Professor Clarence Choi from Hong Kong. We can't wait to hear our stories and activities of the TC208 and your presentation. And then Professor Manolis Veveakis from the University of Duke, also about landslide assessment via your friction model. I can't wait to learn something new today from you. And then our researcher, Ethelbert Mezie from the Imperial College of London. I also can't wait to hear about the problem of gully erosion and stability of slopes, and a special case. I think we're ready. Clarence, the floor is yours. I'll stop sharing. Thank you all for being with us.
Right, thank you, Mr. President. Let me share my slides now. Can you see my slides? Good. On behalf of the leadership of TC28, our chair, Federica Cotecchia, Giuseppe Boscanera, I'm here to just give you a few highlights of our committee. I promise to be short and sweet. So I'm just going to talk about these 5 things very quickly. We've totally revamped the membership. We've adjusted our objectives, and I'll share with you some of the recent activities of our very young new leadership for this committee. We have some priorities that we also want to impress upon you. And then afterwards, I'll share with you the working groups that we've decided to take this committee towards. A quick highlight here. We have now a total of 99 members of our committee covering 35 regions around the world. And it was an initiative and effort to be as diverse as possible with practitioners, researchers from different regions around the world. Now, the general objective we want to do for this committee, we're not only interested in advancing theory, but we also want to make slope assessment more understandable and useful for engineers. And we also want to fix the D-link between practitioners and researchers as well. Now, we've carried out some recent activities. We've had general meetings with all our members, and of course, we've had 3 to 4 leadership meetings, and I look forward to meeting most of our members in person in Vienna shortly. There are some priorities we want to address. The first one is we want to improve assessments of slope stability over predictions of displacement and time. The second is we want to leverage digital twin technology through numerical models tightly with failure mechanisms and diagnosis. And lastly, we want to introduce more physically informed AI tools to slope engineering. Now, what you see here is the promised working groups. Very soon, during our meeting in Vienna, we will separate the committee members into these 8 topics that you see on the slide. For example, we want to look at stability and mechanisms, monitoring digital twins, THM, numerical physical modeling, solve vegetation interaction, and of course, mitigation measures. Now, for working groups 1 and 2, this is essentially on diagnosing slope stability and landslides. Ultimately, we're hoping to produce a way to interpret slopes in a more systematic manner for practitioners around the world. For working group number 3, we've talked a lot about digital twins. We want to actually apply it to slope practice now. Now, another thing we want to look at for working group 3 is the digitalization of data and to transfer it to our committee. So there will be lots of collaboration with other highly relevant committees of ISSMGE. Working group 4, we're hoping to form a geomorphological process that links with geohydromechanical classification. So this is an advancement over the 2014 paper by Professor Ulrich Hunger et al. Groups 5 and 6 will be focused on numerical modeling. So we will look at multi-physics model and multi-scale. Working group 7 and 8 will focus more on plant-soil interaction towards nature-based solutions. And I wanted to give more time to our invited speakers today rather than to talk too much, but I understand I'm supposed to share a bit about my research direction. I focus more on the mitigation aspect. Traditionally, we've been looking at engineered solutions made of steel and concrete, so it's more gray. I'm hoping we can progress towards nature-inspired solutions to enhance engineered solutions. So we learn from nature through millions of years of evolution, and hopefully we can finally have a rational way to adopt nature-based solutions where we use plants and vegetations in situ. And the goal of this is reduce environmental impact, enhance sustainability, and adapt to climate change. So, Mr. President, I promise to be brief, and that's all I want to share, and I'll stop sharing.
Clarence, that was really brief. I like it. And I like that this TC is active. I have to mention that we have a joint technical committee about also landslides with geological people, rock mechanics people, and geosynthetics people under the FIDICS umbrella society, by the way. Manolis, Professor, the floor
Yes,
is yours.
let's
Clarence,
keep
looking
let's
forward
keep
to
the
seeing you.
formalities.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Let me first of all start by sharing because sharing is caring. All right. You should be able to see my screen popping up at full screen very soon, maybe. Can you see my screen? Is everything
Yes,
okay?
we can. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mark, for having me here. Thank you very much for organizing this. I do think this is a great initiative. And I am really excited to share these results that are stemming from my advisor's friction model and not mine. Let's give Caesar what belongs to Caesar here. And I wanted to have, I'll promise to be brief as well, not as brief as Clarence. Clarence has set the bar very high. So I will start by stating the obvious that landslides is among the largest hazards, the most important hazards, natural hazards on Earth. They are causing, as you can see here, they are abundant and ubiquitous, and they are causing casualties all over the world. And they also seem to be triggered predominantly by groundwater level variations. 70% of cases can be linked to groundwater variations, and these effect dwarfs all other triggering mechanisms. The importance of landslides in engineering is profound because among all natural hazards that we know, landslides are the ones that we can actually prevent and mitigate by using preventative measures. So if we have proper monitoring and proper modeling, forecastability and predictability, we can actually deploy measures and prevent landslides, as you can see here from a techno-economic study in Spain. So the ability of us mitigating and reducing costs of infrastructure damage and lives and casualties is hinging upon our understanding and our ability to forecast and control the response of a landslide. All right. So as we said before, groundwater variations is the predominant one. We need to understand the link between groundwater variations and landslide motion, basically. The type of landslides I will talk to you about today is among all landslides the least understood and the most destructive, and that is the deep-seated landslides. I have a video here. So this is a case study from Japan in 2004. Deep-seated landslides are slope motions that are deeply rooted, typically tens to hundreds of meters deep. You can find the sliding surface, and it's pretty much always below the groundwater level. These are landslides that are creeping for prolonged periods of time, years or decades, before finally accelerating and collapsing catastrophically. So as you will see in this video, these landslides will take all preventative measures with them. They're very difficult to be stopped once they start their accelerating phase, and we need to understand them and predict them way in advance. So these landslides have anecdotal, if you like, evidence that they are following the three stages of creep, like the three stages of grief. So they have an initial stage where they're getting triggered. They go into secondary creep where they can move slowly for years or decades, and sometimes they can just stay there. Okay, some other times they don't, and they move towards a tertiary creep where they accelerate catastrophically and they bring down infrastructure and may cause casualties. So the idea here is to try and model them before they go into this catastrophic transition. Yeah,
Manolis, the secondary creep
yes,
is similar to what we call the plastic deformation of glaciers, for example,
correct.
where
So
the
you can see
speed.
that in different fields. You can see it under different names. It's the secondary deformation of glaciers. In geotechnical engineering, this is commonly associated with creeping at the critical state. So you go at critical state and you keep shearing at a constant friction. And tertiary creep in geotechnical engineering may be associated with
Failure.
dynamic weakening, yeah, residual state, if you like, or failure. So these are, you will see the same type in different areas once we get in creep. Like materials also have the same creep failure, the same type. And the idea is always to try and prevent the behavior from going to tertiary creep. So until...
Can you describe on this curve what would another curve, how would you draw a second curve that would be shallow landslide instead of deep-seated landslide?
Well, so shallow
Can you
landslide
draw it?
will be similar, but the secondary creep may be reduced to zero. Like the shallow landslide may go from primary creep directly to tertiary. Like
Okay, thank you.
you may not have prolonged evidence of failure. Okay, so you may have a fast flood event, for example, that will liquefy your soil, which is going like from zero to directly primary creep. And then because of reduced friction, you will go directly to tertiary creep. Does it make sense? That's more or less. All right, so our monitoring and forecasting tools until basically my advisor started this work was purely phenomenological, right? So we would set monitoring tools either in situ or remote, like fly a drone or put LiDAR or put inclinometers and measure the displacement or the velocity of the slope. And then we would try to forecast failure. Okay, and the way to do it is to approximate the tertiary creep with a hyperbola and plot the inverse velocity of the motion. So when the velocity, we call failure the velocity going to infinity. So inverse velocity goes to zero. Okay, so we plot real-time data We're trying to establish linear trends. When a linear trend is established, we extrapolate, and whenever the inverse velocity becomes zero, we call that failure. This was the state of the art of forecasting deep-seated landslides, failure of deep-seated landslides, until pretty much 10 years ago. That could work. It could give you a few minutes time to evacuate basically your site and prevent casualties, but it has a few problems, a few limitations. The first one is that it's purely phenomenological. You do not get any insights of the origin of failure. You don't know if the landslide failed because of increased groundwater. You don't know if the landslide failed because of nearby earthquake motions. There is no insight on the physics of what's happening here, and as such, it cannot offer any information of how to prevent it. Okay, so we cannot tell you if you need to go and drain the landslide, or you need to go and strengthen it somewhere, anchor it. We don't know what is the reason for the failures, and as such, we cannot prevent it. So because of that,
you have to be measuring the speed of the movement.
yes, that's what you're
You
measuring.
have to be monitoring.
Yeah, you have to also be monitoring other factors and draw correlations. You have to be monitoring the pressure of the groundwater level and try to establish some correlation. I will try to keep it very short, so I don't have time to show you case studies, but there is a longer talk that I will point you to, that you can see correlations and why they fail sometimes when you don't have the physics. So what we did with my advisor was adding some of the physics on the friction so that we have some preventative capabilities and some links to the physics. So this is Yannis Vardoulakis. Most of you know him as a geotechnical engineer. He passed almost 17 years ago. But before passing, he gave us a few gems in geotechnical engineering. And one of them was his generalization, if you like, of critical state, the critical state concept of friction. He said that for creep to be able to be established, the friction coefficient should be generalized past its concept of being eternally constant and equal to 0.6 or whatever. And he published a couple of seminal papers by now where he said that the friction coefficient here, mu, could be a factor of counterbalancing mechanisms. So you may have, he observed that in clays, you typically have velocity or strain rate hardening. And he tried to accompany that with a softening mechanism, which he ended up suggesting being the thermal softening, where theta here is the temperature. And then when you put them together in a multiplicative sense, the friction coefficient can stay constant, can attain a constant value when these two mechanisms counterbalance each other. And then if one of the two prevails, you either have velocity hardening, so your landslide arrests, or you have thermal softening and your landslide goes to tertiary creep. So following this observation, we were able in 2007 to use that in a predictive manner and predict the last 4 or 5 months of the infamous Vaillant landslide, which I'm going to show quickly. So we realized that the model can capture the transition between secondary creep to tertiary creep. Okay, but before he passes, I was in the process of generalizing even more this model and adding groundwater effects and allowing for time variations of the landslide, etc. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time with him to do it. So I paused for a decade and I did it once I was back at Duke. So this is how we did it with my student, Carolina Segui. I'm going to go through a schematic representation. I don't want to bombard you with technical details and math. So what we did is we coupled the classical groundwater models that you would have, where you calculate the hydraulic head of a region. You feed it into a limit analysis model. You calculate the stresses at the bottom of your landslide. Then you transfer the stresses on your sliding surface. And then this sliding surface will admit the friction model of Vardoulakis. Through that, we have the velocity calculation, and we restart the cycle. All this analysis standard, straightforward, except from the analysis in here on the sliding surface at the base of the landslide, where this one is a little bit tricky because you have to assume a finite thickness of a shear band. Then the equations in there become simple but non-trivial in the sense that the momentum balance here will give you no stress variations. So your stresses on the sliding surface are constant across the shear band and equal to the outside calculations that you did with your limit analysis model. The mass balance has no variations because you're at critical state. There is no volume change. And the only equation that survives is the energy balance. The energy balance, which is featuring heat capacity, temperature, heat diffusivity, and the dissipation in shear inside the sliding surface, the shear band. So if you couple that with Veveakis' friction model, where you can solve for the strain rate, you have a final partial differential equation, which is a diffusion reaction. You can do some scaling of this equation, and I'm not going to bother you with math a lot, but you can go from this horrible expression to a much more palatable here, where it is a single parameter equation that is featuring a number called Grundfest number. This Grundfest number is essentially a ratio of two dimensionless rates. Okay, so it is the rate at which you produce heat due to friction versus the rate at which you diffuse heat away from the sliding surface. So imagine you rubbing your hands. If you rub them slowly, you don't understand anything. If you start rubbing them fast, you feel the heat because the heat is trapped inside because you are producing heat faster than your hands can diffuse away. That's what this number represents, and that is the mechanism that controls the basal response of landslides to external variations. So everything that I said can be plotted in a mathematical way, in a stability plot, where you have the Grundfest number here versus the temperature, which is the solution of this steady state equation. And everything that I said is in here. If the Grundfest number is small, meaning you are rubbing your hands, or the frictional heat is produced slowly, the landslide can stay stable in here. If you start shearing fast, the landslide will become unstable, entering an adiabatic regime where it cannot diffuse away the heat that is generated. So you can see that if you take two initial conditions that are the same, they're both zero at the beginning with slightly different Grundfest number. One is inside the stable area, the other one is outside the stable area. The one inside will just go up, meet this branch here, and stay there forever in what we call secondary creep, if you like, or critical state. The other one will go directly from primary creep to tertiary. Okay, so you can see it in the temperature. You can plot the velocity, which is the same. So this is a mechanism of judging when a landslide can go from a stable secondary creep to an unstable tertiary creep. Now, this number here, I don't want to go into. Yep.
Was this discovered and developed from laboratory testing or?
Yes. So we have, so the friction law and the thermal dependence is discovered and developed mainly from lab tests. So we have ring shear and triaxials at different temperatures. But we have also tested it in plenty of field cases. I'll show you a couple quickly because I know I'm running late. Okay, but the most important outcome here is the following. The Grundfest number has the dependence of the groundwater level here, of the hydraulic head. Okay, so this one is in principle not constant. It will be evolving with time. Okay, so if the hydraulic head, if your groundwater level increases, you will go in this direction. If it decreases, it will go in this direction. So you could have a monitoring and assessment tool of when your landslide becomes unstable. So I'll show you a couple of case studies. I don't have time to go through the experiments and the experimental validation of the law itself, but I will point you to another talk and several papers that you can read, and I'm happy to follow up with anyone needing further information. So the first test of the model was in the Vaillon landslide, where we didn't have all the information of the material because it happened 60 years ago, but we had plenty of in situ data. So for those who don't know the Vaillon landslide, you will see a photo of it today. It happened in the Italian Dolomites, about 80 kilometers north of Venice, up here. It happened behind a dam that it still stands today, where they created a reservoir for hydroelectric needs in Italy. I'm going to play a video that is viewed from that side. This is the dam that you can see here that describes the disaster. So the Vaillon landslide was creeping for more than 3 years after the completion of the dam and the filling of the reservoir at inappreciable rates. And then at some point, it fell in the lake with 120 kilometers per hour. The landslide overflowed the dam, flooded the downstream valley, and killed 2,000 people in total. So this is to date the larger human-induced disaster in civil engineering, basically, in geotechnical
Did you
engineering.
play a video?
Yes. Did you see it?
Can you try again? It was still uploading.
Let me see.
Did you guys see it, Clarence? You saw it?
No, I didn't see it either. I just saw black screen.
I'm
And
sorry.
this video was taken in the 1963.
No. It's an artistic rendition, but I can send it to you, and we can probably.
You can try playing again.
I am playing it again, but it's probably not
Yes.
coming.
Wait, it may be uploading on
Okay.
to reach.
Okay. So anyway, what I will do now is I will show you how the model works in an evolving groundwater level and how we can use it practically to assess real time how a landslide evolves from stable to unstable. So what you see 3 panels here. The left panel is the real data from the Vaillon from 1963. Okay, so this is precipitation. The blue line here is the reservoir level, and the red line is the velocity of the landslide. The reservoir level is essentially the groundwater level because it was a fully saturated slope here. In the middle, you have the same velocity in blue dots, and then the green and black curves are the model velocity within an uncertainty cone, and the red one is the model temperature that we calculate and we plot. And then on the right-hand side, I have plotted this solution here on the phase space to see when we go from stable to unstable. Okay, so let's run the case study here. In 1961, after the completion of the dam and the filling of the reservoir and all the preventative measures, they started filling the reservoir here. Okay, so during this stage, the model velocity started accelerating, the landslide started accelerating. The engineers in the field observed it. Okay, in the phase space, it went from being very stable to being still stable, but less, closer to the tipping point. The engineers observed the acceleration and brought the reservoir level down here. By doing that, they managed to slow down the landslide and establish that this is a positive groundwater level velocity correlation, and it brought down the landslide here. Then after that, they reloaded the reservoir up to its design level at 710 meters. The landslide started accelerating again, but not in dissimilar values than the previous one. However, they went a bit too far and they exceeded the stability threshold, which they didn't know it back then. We know it now. So when they realized that it's accelerating, they started lowering the reservoir level again, trying to arrest the landslide, but the landslide was unresponsive by then and it collapsed. So this is how the model works in tandem with field data. I want to show you a case study where we have actually used as a field lab. We have it fully instrumented. We have the material. We have real time monitoring every 20 minutes. And this is the Elforn landslide in Andorra. This is a deep-seated landslide with a shear band being found at 30 meters depth over here. We have continuous measurements. We have retrieved the core log from the borehole that we did. We have tested the material. We have tested the properties that we need for the model. And we can actually do a deterministic, if you like, inversion. So we have placed sensors for pore pressure and temperature at different locations, including inside the sear band, so that we see if there is any temperature variation that would be of importance for us to measure. So what you see here is the temperature sensors. This is inside the sear band, the red one. The blue one is below the sear band. The orange one is above the sear band. And what you see here is the water pressure below the sear band. So this one has a pressurized aquifer from below. This is being fed from snow melting and pressurized aquifer from below. And what you see is a correlation between the water pressure, the temperature at the sear band, and the displacement. Every time you have a water pressure variation, the sear band changes its temperature after about 12 hours, and 12 hours later, you have an acceleration event. Okay? So we could measure all the material properties through laboratory tests. We can input the groundwater level. We can forecast the displacement. We can do an inversion, deterministic inversion of the material properties, and we can plot it in the stability map. It is in a very stable location, and we can monitor it in real time. Okay, and so we had an event a couple of years ago that the landslide was accelerating and reached almost the tipping point, and we had to go there and drain the landslide and bring it back to stability. So on the most important bit, though, is that
Manolis, can you go back? Can you go back to slides?
This one?
The one showing the temperature. Yeah, this one.
Yep.
So I'm reading the temperature, top right, 1.005.
Yes.
1.01 T over T0.
So
the
this
temperature is increasing by 10%.
The temperature is increasing 1%. 1%. The temperature is increasing by 1% in this specific event. So
it's that sensitive?
So the sensor is sensitive enough. We bought it to be very sensitive. So I can tell you this is a real signal. The landslide itself is not that sensitive. Okay, so we're not talking here about 0.01 degrees. This is a period where we didn't have significant acceleration, and I don't want to say that recorded, but I cannot show you the period where we had significant acceleration, and you all understand why. So these are the data
that's sensitive. I mean,
so the most important bit, and the reason I've put it here, is that despite the low value, you can see the footprint of the water pressure here. So this acts like how do you call it?
Like analogy, you can detection.
Like an analog, exactly. So the temperature is not for us, it's a proxy for dissipative processes happening in the sear band. Okay, so we are not necessarily interested in the absolute value. We are most interested on its rate and how it changes. Okay, I can tell you that in the event where we had a near failure, the temperature spiked 1.5 degrees in a day.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yes. So for us, this is the proposition I want to make, that like this is a very cheap way to monitor landslide. Like our temperature sensor, which was very sophisticated, costed $50. So it's a very inexpensive way of monitoring landslides. Now, an additional benefit, and I think I'm more or less done here, is that once you have the physics constraint and you know that this is more or less a predictive model with a physics constraint, you can use them in conjunction with limited in situ data in conjunction with remote sensing. So we took satellite data, INSAR data from the satellite, and coupled them with our model, and we could generate a real-time Grundfest map. So, by now you must know that higher values of Grundfest mean that the landslide becomes more unstable. So we could see which areas of the landslide are more prone to instability. So if we have to go and drain them, for example, we can go targeted in a specific area and basically interfere there.
So you can say I like to put few piles in the red dots.
Correct, correct. And if and if you don't have enough data, like you have a satellite that passes every 6 days and it does not cover the whole area, you can create your Grunfest map, and this is also a measure of uncertainty. Wherever you don't have enough information, the model will tell you, and you may want to go there and drill a borehole, for example, to get extra material. Okay, so it works both ways of informing us where to go and operate, but also informing us where to measure more. So that's it. I wanted to stay on time. I have plenty more case studies in the US and in Europe and in Asia.
Are you gonna show us some of your work in Vienna?
So my intention is to be there, but for personal reasons, I will need to confirm with you later this week. My father is having an operation, so I may need to stay in Greece.
Wish you the
Anyway,
best, man.
thank you. There is a longer version of this talk here, which is me talking with this Greek accent for an hour through all the experimental validation and all the case studies we have made.
Make
I want to
sure.
acknowledge my
How
students.
long is that lecture?
That one is an hour.
You can connect with Zekos, Dimitrios,
Oh yeah. I am in.
and
I'm talking to them.
try to publish it in the virtual university lectures.
Oh, okay. I'll talk to Dimitris. I
We
am in
can
contact with him.
upload it and add it to the virtual university. This way you can
Okay. Yeah.
send the link to all the friends, and it's good for all of us.
Yes. So this was
It's
just a
free
teaser.
access, I'm guessing. Yeah.
Yeah. This was
Thank
just
you.
a teaser, and sorry for running long. I didn't
No,
wanna.
we're good. We're good.
Thank you.
Clarence, you were showing a picture of landslide full scale. Was it the one you worked with Professor Charles? Because I kind of saw this before.
I worked at HQST with Professor Charles for 4 years. So before I went to
Yeah,
University of Hong Kong. Yeah.
I saw his lecture on that one.
Right. Yeah.
Also, great work.
Thank you.
Ethelbert, are you ready?
Yes,
You're muted.
yes.
Yes. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you so much for inviting me for this presentation. I have to try and be as fast as possible because I really have a limited time where I am now. I booked a place in the school library, so I have to be very, very fast. Time is running out already. So thank you so much once again. So I'm going to present my research on problem of global relation and stability of slopes, case of Anambra State in southeastern Nigeria. So I'm going to look at these following points in my presentation. And then I'm going to focus my presentation on this location in Nigeria. In Nigeria, we have the southeastern region of Nigeria, a very small region, has within the region you have a major problem of gully erosion, and I'm going to focus on the state of Anambra, where the problem is more prominent. Now, this is a gully concentration map in Anambra State. You can see this region, more than 40% of the state is already affected by different scale of gully erosion. The southeast, as I mentioned before, is the hotspot. You can see it's a very small region, but within the region, about more than 53.3% of gully erosion studies are concentrated there, which is almost more than half within the whole country. And then Anambra State, up to 119 studies focusing on the state, which is still more than half of the entire country. And within the Anambra State, about 4 decades ago, we have about 10% of the state affected, but within a very short time, only 4 decades, more than 40% of the state affected, which shows that there's really a very, the gully concentration is increasing in an alarming rate. And then within the state also, there are three towns that really have the hotspot of the problem: Nanka, Agol, and Oruku. I made a plot of, if you go to the literature, most of the studies you will find there are based within these three regions. And I made a plot of the soil properties obtained from the literature on these areas, Nanka, Agol, and Oruku. You can see the average values of the grading characteristics, the Atterberg limits, cohesion, angle of internal friction, compaction properties, and then hydraulic conductivity, which shows that the soils there are actually prone. The properties show that how much they are disposed to being eroded by gullies. And then I have some features of these gullies. You can see we really have a very deep, very deep gullies. The slope angles within the gullies varies from 18 to 75 degrees, average of 50 degrees, and then the length, the width and depth of gullies span up to sometimes more 100, 1.2 kilometer or more, 30 meter with 50-meter depth, which shows that there's really a very big scale, that this type of problem is occupying more than 40% of the state. Show that something serious is really happening and something serious needs to be done about it. Then some literature also reported that landslides actually occur along the gullies, which is, I would call it like a special case, because if we read about landslides, sometimes it's common with natural slopes. But in this case now, we already have a bad land which is existing and which is also prone to landslides. It's one special case of landslides, which can also be called slope failures. Then a number of measures have been put in place to curtail this. We have the use of sandbags, bamboo, drainages along gully channels, use of vegetation and concrete works. But with all these measures, little has been achieved in controlling the menace. And this brings up a lot of questions regarding effectiveness, sustainability, cost, environmental friendliness, and then reusability of the slope. And then going further, a lot of literature also reported that most remedial measures that have been put in place, just as I showed, focus on controlling the surface water, but these have largely failed. And the argument is that the root cause of the problem has not actually been found, or maybe something is still missing. Also, another research also reported that the measures that based on techniques are capable of reducing erosive capacity, because most times when erosion occurs, it's assumed that the erosion is actually because of maybe if the soil properties are not good, are not strong enough, the flowing water erodes the surface and then erosion occurs. But these techniques is what the remedial measures are based on, but they haven't been actually very effective. And based on this, we are now thinking that something else must be missing. Again, we show that evidence of the interaction of the predisposing factors. We have the geological factors, the topography, and the annual rainfall. Can see how these factors correlate. And then, which imply that the interaction of predisposing factors are very obvious, but there's a reason that an integrated approach should be used. But if you look at this map, these are those that are interested about the problem within the region. It seems that there is a lot of bias. Like geologists appear to be more interested, while some persons are missing. Some important discipline are actually not well represented. Based on this, we agree that an integrated approach is necessary, and also something must be missing. Regarding about the problem, understanding the true mechanism of the problem. And then we are proposing that the influence of partial saturation based on the location of the gullies within the tropical region, that the influence of partial saturation could be something that is missing in the strategy that are being used. And then understanding this will also help to improve understanding about how the different factors interact to produce the gullies and the slides that are flowing up. And then why do we think like this? Why do we think that this could be contributing? Also, based on the previous studies, it reported that slopes frequently fell during short or long intense rainfall, mostly at the beginning of rainy season. And also some reported that there's high buildup of compressive water pressure due to infiltration when rain comes. Also, some research also reported the variation of tensile pore water pressure, which is suction, from the surface, which is as big as 650 kPa then getting towards the water table, which is like 160 kPa. And from this, we now postulate that pressure saturation could be critical for slope failures within the region. And then we want to now investigate this through the combination of slope stability analysis and laboratory investigation. And for this study, we created a slope based on, we look at the gully and created a slope in half symmetry. And now I will now assign some properties to the slope. We created the model based on the geological profiles within the region, which comprises mostly of laterite, overlying Nanka sands. And we now did a slope stability analysis using net inflow outflow, which is different between precipitation and evapotranspiration, which are the thing that causes surface flux balance. And we used a rainfall. The rainfall we used was 2019. That's, we obtained rainfall data from 2014 to 2023, and within that period, 2019 is the highest rainfall year. So we used the rainfall from that 2019, and then first of all, we did the slope stability analysis creating a slope of average slope angle reported in the literature, which is 50 degrees. After the analysis, during the dry months, which is January to March, the stability of slope was increasing as the slope was drying, but immediately rain come, the stability dropped significantly. And in the analysis was done in Plazis, and in Plazis, once a slope fails, it doesn't have capacity to simulate post-failure deformation. So immediately the rain came, the analysis could not proceed, which presumed that the slope has failed. And then what we did, we now trimmed the slope to 27 degrees and did the analysis again. And then we now obtained the analysis we were able to complete the analysis, but even at that, the stability was still marginal. Within the rainfall years, we still have a very low factor of safety, even at a low slope. So based on and if you look at the pore water pressure, we also plotted the pore water pressure variation between March, which is the end of dry months, and April, which is the beginning of rainy months. You can see by how much suction is lost when rain fall from values of up to 300 kPa going downwards to almost zero for most depth of the slope. Based on this, we are now able to agree that pressure saturation could actually be contributory to the root cause of the problem within the region. And then, having this in mind, we now proceeded also to investigate the soil properties, actual soil properties, because the analysis we did was properties we obtained from the literature. We now decided to pick a soil sample from a Nanka Gully erosion site that where this landslide is actually occurring. This site is well known that in 1988, a major landslide occurred there, which resulted to the evacuation of more than 50 homes. And the site has continued to expand, even to the present day, it has continued to expand, taking more land, taking more places. So we now pick up a sample from the place to study investigate the soil properties to know whether actually the pressure saturation has some input in the soil. So first of all we did.
Ethelbert?
Sir?
Yeah. Could you go back one slide?
Okay.
Yeah. What remedial measures were they applying that's not been very effective? Do you know?
Yeah. They use
terracing or.
Yeah, it's more of they use more of concrete works. Sometimes they use gabions. Yeah, I think terracing is also in.
It's a huge site.
Huh?
It's a huge problem
Yes,
here.
yes, very
like a big landslide.
Yes. It's continued to expand up to today. So based on this, we now
evacuated. Wow.
Huh?
I'm reading. Good. Keep going.
Okay. So we now did first of all, we did collapse a potential test for the soils, and we noticed that this soil was prepared. Okay. So the soil was prepared at institute density and moisture content. And we did the collapse potential test. We discovered that when the soil was rated as constant stress, a significant collapse occurred are both 100. We used three stresses 100, 200, and 400 kPa. At three of them, collapse was significant. We also measured the soil water retention curve of the soil. We noticed that there is a bimodal soil water retention curve, which shows that within the soil properties that there is a combination of micro and macro structure, which is common to residual soils, and which, if such soils are not protected, they are liable to collapse under the influence of rainfall infiltration. So these are some evidences we have already gotten that pressure saturation could also be critical to the landslides. And then we now propose that a capillary barrier system can be possible to help in protecting the slopes from a rainfall infiltration. And what did we do so? The person that has studied the landslides reported that after studying the landslides, he mentioned that the slopes actually need something that will keep them permanently dry, even during the rainfall. And this capillary barrier system is a system that has actually been studied extensively and reported that it can be a good system for that, but within the region it hasn't been applied, it hasn't been investigated. So we are thinking that this could actually be a good approach. So we investigated this by creating the capillary barrier comprises a fine grain soil over a coarse grain soil that can create capillary break when rain is falling. So we now investigated what this can do. We did the analysis we did. First of all, we created a flat gland in which we constructed the barrier by excavating part of the soil. And when we are now applying at the beginning of rainfall, which is 2019.
We're running out of time.
Okay.
Can we go faster?
Okay, so we apply the rainfall, and then we discover that when rain comes, actually the more stability is maintained. Then we further apply this to slope stability, to the slope. We notice that there's significant improvement in the factor of safety of the slope, even during the rainfall years. So our plan is to re-engineer the local soil to use it as balance of, because we are also looking at the influence of cost. And this is what we have presently. This is the soil water retention curve we measured, and this is what we want. So we now have our soil grading curve. We are planning to modify the grading of the curve so that from there we can now be able to obtain grading that can be helpful, that can serve as can give us a good grade hydraulic properties for the CBS material. We're also going ahead to investigate the mechanical properties of the soil using Barcelona basic model. From this, we can now be able to get, they understand clearly the hydromechanical coupling of the soil properties and the effect on the slope failures. And then the further investigation we are doing is, because we know that we have a very high amount of rainfall and intensity within the region. So we are also looking ahead, because we think that capillary barrier may not be that effective, may not be only effective due to the amount of rainfall. So we are thinking of where the barrier is combined with vegetation and drainage. We think that if these mechanisms are put in place, it can actually help to control the slope failures within the region. This is a kind of outlook of what we are trying to design. Like something like this is a complete system that we think that if we implement this, that it can actually help to prevent further failures. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Great. We finished on time. Thank you so much. I have to run back.
Thank you. Thank you as well.
Prepare my
Thank you.
report. Ready to see you in
See you next week.
Vienna.
See you all
This
next
was the
week.
last. Yes, this was the last recorded IITT with Dr. Ballouz. Let's see if the next president will keep going with this initiative. Can't thank you enough, and thank all our speakers from all the previous IITTs, and best wishes, and see you soon. Ciao, guys.
Ciao.